All right, welcome back, fellow bingers and bickerers. In the spirit of Halloween, Dan and I have put together a Halloween special, but not like, Mike Myers stabbing people to death Halloween special.
the holiday Halloween, like
horror celebration.
A horror celebration. Like all your favorite Halloween or all your favorite shows or not really movies, but sometimes movies. Like Disney Channel was huge when we were kids on Halloween movies with the Halloween Towns. But Charlie Brown had a Halloween special where he just gets a rock instead of candy, and then all the cartoons they normally have a.
But that's
Halloween
not what
special.
we're doing.
No, we're talking about other stuff. We're not getting rocks.
Before we butcher this any further, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you can get instant access to all of our content.
Sound.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll just roll into our first topic, which is we have on the board right here, which we just put crudely, scariest
motherfucker.
Which that could boil down to a movie character or some type of creature or entity, just whatever the fuck scares you more than anything else. Because sometimes, horror movies on repeated watching aren't as scary.
No.
They're one of the genres that are most spoiled by rewatch, I
Definitely. I think like a majority of the genre itself like plays into you watching it for the first time with all those jump scares. And some of those jump scares are still going to get you like most of the time. But like, once the illusion of, surprise and whatnot and first time viewing is gone, then it kind of loses its luster.
Yeah, just the big twist, whether it's The Shining or Seven or something like that. So, who's your scariest motherfucker?
My scariest motherfucker to this day, and it's hardly in the horror genre whatsoever, but this, like, every time I see this,
I think I know where this is going.
It scares the shit out of me. It certainly scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, but it still scares me now. Like I just think it's unnecessarily fucking creepy, and I don't understand what the the allure of it is. It's E.T.
Yeah, I knew it. When we were prepping for the episode, and you were saying mine's kind of funny, I didn't think, and then once you started talking, I was like, I know exactly what he's gonna say.
Okay, it's E.T., and here's why. Okay, the first, 3 minutes of E.T. where, they're playing the scary music and, the purple, opening credits are, on the screen, and you don't, see E.T., you see them, him or, his creatures from, afar, and it's just creepy, lights, creepy, just elements of the film that just, scares the shit out of me, dude. And then later on in the movie where Elliot first meets E.T. and he's in the shed in the back and E.T. yells, he's like, ah! There's nothing cute about that. People think E.T. is cute. E.T. is not cute. He is terrifying as shit. And I still to this day I don't really watch E.T. because he scares me. And that opening scene is horrifying for children, and I don't think it should be watched.
I would like to chastise you, but when I've seen E.T. once.
Yeah.
And I was kind of creeped out by it too. I think I just saw it too young. There's definitely it's not a horror sci-fi by any stretch, but he plays on it a little bit at the beginning. And I think there's a ride at Universal or something like that. I was even a little scared when I was on that ride.
It's E.T.
creeped me out too.
4D the ride or something like that.
Yeah.
You're on the bikes or something.
I wouldn't say I have PETSD, but it's a stupid fucking
PTETSD.
but he's creepy.
Yeah.
For sure. He's a wrinkly asshole.
Yeah. Well, and then just not just him, but also the man with the keys, and you never see his face, and all of the government overtaking Elliot's house. All of that is terrifying to me. But E.T. like is like the source of it all, and that first 3 minutes is just horrifying.
I can't entirely shit on it because that movie's inspired a bunch of movies like Super 8, Stranger Things. You know,
I understand the significance of it.
But I personally,
but yeah, it's terrifying. It's scary.
All right, I wanted to give some. I mean, there's so many.
There are a lot.
All right, so I know which one I'm taking now that you didn't pick them. The Exorcist to this day is still pretty creepy.
Yeah.
The cross stabbing scene to the vagina is so gross. John Doe, played by real life rapist Kevin Spacey. Although John Doe is not a rapist.
No,
although the lust scene is
murderer.
fucking gross.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter, great honorable mention. Both Mickelson and Hopkins. Pennywise, It. Norman Bates, The Babadook, and Amy Dunn from Gone Girl. I would mention all of them. But I got to go with Jack Torrance from The Shining. Because any horror list you look at, The Shining is generally ranked number 1 for a reason. And it makes it even better that the movie was kind of shit on when it came out to tell you how wrong critics had it. They're like, this movie's not very good. Now it's considered the best ever. In large part due to Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance giving the ultimate descent into madness. And one of the few movies that every time I watch it, that sense of dread, the score, the slow burn, the performances, they all work so well.
And speaking of haunting opening scenes, the music, the opening shot of The Shining is every time you hear that music, like it still freaks me out because like I know like what I'm about to watch, but like instead of getting like creeped out like I do when I watch E.T., like it's more of like a holy shit, like I got to sit here and watch this. Like I think Jack Torrance, like The Shining doesn't lose its shine on rewatch because like just the eeriness of like what happens in that hotel, the Overlook, is just so haunting because like just by the end of the movie where it's just like a loop in time and everything like that. It's just crazy.
You know what I noticed too on my most recent rewatch is his going crazy episode. It happens earlier than I remember. It's very early on where he's already fucking whipping the tennis ball at the wall and stuff. And I always thought it came towards the end, but it's the scene where he's holding Danny in the bed and he's talking to him.
The
fucking uncomfortable.
Like the end feels like it's very quick, but that like the whole like ending sequence, like night, is like about like an hour long or close to it. Like there's the fallout of the movie or like the falling actions of the movies take place over a long period of time, but it's just so like something horrifying or thrilling kind of happens in each moment leading up to the end of the film.
I would pick Jack too because he doesn't rely on special effects or gore to really be scary. It's all in the performance and in the dialogue and interactions between characters. And it's uncomfortable every time.
I think that what The Shining does so well, above, kind of what the modern genre has turned into, is like, I feel like, I mean, we'll talk about this a little later, but I feel like psychological thrillers like aren't made as much anymore. And I feel like The Shining, it does, like, it is like a horror film and arguably the greatest of all time in that aspect. But like, it's the fact that it's like kind of more of a psychological thriller with horror aspects to it, like puts it on top of that list.
Well, that'll segue us into our next topic, which is we're just talking about our favorite types of horrors, which you have the slasher, nowadays the indie horror, which are very focused on carrying messages in the art of filmmaking, maybe rather than putting jump scares out there. You have the haunted house ghost stories. If you want to throw noir in there, you can. Suspense, thriller. Am I missing any others?
Let's
see. creature feature,
Yeah.
sci-fi horror. I think those are the other two I meant to mention. So what would you say?
Well, I think the psychological thriller is probably in terms of recurring, like it's definitely like one of the ones that like if I'm able to leave and I'm kind of like psychologically like kind of like fucked, you know, and it doesn't rely on like jump scares or any of the typical like notes of, you know, horror movies.
You know where it's come. You know the beat of
Exactly.
the scare. Yeah.
Then I can leave with a positive experience, like of watching, you know, any other type of film. And I don't think you see as many of them nowadays. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the horror genre, so like if there are more, like I might just not have seen them because like I'm not leaving my house to go
Right.
pay and see horror movies necessarily. But like I think one of the Gerald's Game, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King book, got released on Netflix a couple years ago, and I think this like that fits into the category of like a psychological thriller for sure because like it's just a woman who gets handcuffed to a bed. Her and her husband like are on some like, you know, honeymoon vacation, whatever, and he handcuffs her to the bed. And they're about to get like romantic, and then he fucking has a heart attack and dies, and she's handcuffed to the bed, and she's kind of just left there with her thoughts, and like you're left there with her thoughts as well. And you know, with that being like a Netflix movie, like it was really pretty well done for what they were doing, and I enjoyed. I was surprised that I enjoyed it, but it does come from the mind of Stephen King, and he does kind of do a lot more psychological stuff than the jump scares. But like, you know, I mean, I think that came out in like 2016, maybe 17.
Something like that. And the degloving scene,
yes,
in that movie's very gross. The director of that movie, Mike Flanagan, has also done the Haunting series on Netflix, which are also excellent. He's done another movie called Hush. He did Dr. Sleep. So he's kind of become a horror maestro as of late. So he also added to that movie, being very good. I would agree with the psychological horrors. Basically anything David Fincher touches, which is like Zodiac, Seven, Gone Girl, Panic Room. All of his are kind of my cup of tea when it comes to horror because they carry that really. They're just so tough to watch. Like you feel like you gotta take a shower after watching them,
right?
And they will keep you up. I do love a good haunted house story, but they've also been there's so many bad ones.
They've been done.
There's so many bad ones. Slashers, I can forget about them. I've kind of grown to really appreciate the indie horror movies. I also really like.
Well, that's like that's
what I was gonna say. Psycho horror, The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Pattinson, is also falls under that category.
Yeah, I think like the Babadook counts as like the indie horror kind of film, right?
Some of these cross over too,
right? And I mean that's the thing. Like horror does have, you know, I mean fucking E.T. has horror elements. You know, you're gonna find like these crossover elements across, you know, films. But like the Babadook, I feel like movies made kind of like that over the last couple of years, like. They've really kind of overtaken the genre, without a doubt, whether they're foreign or they're from independent filmmakers here. And, you know, I think of like the movie Mama, like came out probably around 10 years ago. Like the movies kind of like that where, you know, you could tell it was kind of made with like this artsy kind of message behind it. I can get along with those, but like I feel like the glimmer of that, as we've talked about, like after first watch, you know, you can understand why like it might be like a better film than most horrors or most films kind of underneath the umbrella of the horror genre. But I still feel like they're part of like kind of the oversaturation problem in these films as well.
What I really have grown to appreciate about him, whether it's The Babadook or It Follows, Hereditary,
Hereditary,
The Lighthouse, The Witch. what I've really grown to like about these movies is how much of a debate they spark. They're indie movies and not everyone sees them, but they become popular because of word of mouth, because some people are like, holy shit,
There's like
that was
one
revolutionary.
fucked up scene
Yeah.
in like all of those too, and the
Yeah.
one in Hereditary like still like
That's what to me, that's good horror when you can look back and
Yeah.
pinpoint something that happened. I've grown to really appreciate those. I think they've pumped some juice into the genre going forward. So yeah, I might go with the indie horror, but they kind of splice together all the forms. But I mean, this isn't that we're not doing fucking science here.
along the sides of thriller as well. You do have noir films, and noir films are obviously like most popular really in the 40s 50s. I mean, you think of classic black and white noirs, but like the neo noir, when you get your Chinatowns all the way to today, when you have your Drives and your Place Beyond the Pines kind of films, I think this is where like horror aspects like can survive. I think kind of a dark mystery tale with like mystery thrilling aspects that kind of keep eyes glued to the screen for 2 hours. Like, I think more films need to be made like that. I think the noir is I mean, one of the better aspects and better genres of film. And I know they pop up here and there with like callbacks to the original noir genre, and they don't necessarily have to have like the horror
they're
elements
disguised because black and white doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you just have to they get disguised under I mean, having color, but then also like having to play with cinematography and storytelling aspects, so that they're not like the same old like detective, femme fatale, like all of these things. But I think like not always like the horror elements come up with it, but normally like a good like crime noir in modern days like does have like these thrilling aspects that outbeat horror for sure.
Yeah, I would say that there's some discomfort in a lot of those movies that certainly is better than some of the fucking movies like The Nun or Annabelle 12.
Well, you mentioned Gone Girl, like that could be considered a noir in some
for sure.
aspects,
I would think so.
Like that is just kind of you do have like there's one scene, the bedroom scene that's really fucked up, and you have like that aspect of like a horror, but really it's a mystery thriller noir film. And Gone Girl is fucking fantastic. If you haven't seen it, go check it out.
So our next segment then is we're going to do one overrated and one underrated horror movie. And of course, as always, comment your opinions below.
Yes.
We like hearing your guys' opinions.
Yeah.
We don't like hearing our own voices. So I'll kick this one off.
Okay.
I hate Paranormal Activity.
Okay. Yeah,
because Paranormal
I never got
Activity,
into those.
The first one is fucking dumb to begin with. It's like, oh, it's found footage like Blair Witch Project, which is way better.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, it's found footage. It's really scary. I remember I was always, when I was younger, a scaredy cat when it came to horror movies. And I watched that one and I was like, this is stupid. And then it proceeds to make, I don't know, like 5 or 6 sequels. And I think it is just the epitome of the horror genre at its worst. One movie makes a lot of money and is okay. Mm-hmm. In this case, this one's not even good. And they proceed to just fucking milk that count. I know that's the industry, but they get so lazy and cheap. And it's annoying.
Yeah.
It's the first one I don't even think deserved follow-up movies, and everyone just talks about the ending where I think it's the oh, she kills the husband. I'm like, okay, that's your big fucking moment in a horror movie. That happens basically a fucking quarter of the way through most of them.
Yeah. I think like the the found footage aspect of that is what made them kind of like popular, because like people thought it was fucking real, but like, but because like I remember like
The door closes.
the commercials for Paranormal Activity were like they'd have like the audience reactions like as part of like the trailers and the commercials, and that completely sold these movies, which are utter garbage. And I look back at Blair Witch, and I mean, I wasn't old enough to experience this myself, but my parents like told me that like the way that Blair Witch was marketed was insane, and without the internet, without Twitter, all of these things that could like debunk whether or not this is real now. They like the kids in the movie like didn't show up to the premiere. They said they were dead and that this actually happened, and like this was kind of the premiere like found footage movie. And I mean, they pulled that off big time, and like the ending of it is crazy. And like that movie kind of started almost the modern horror kind of, and not necessarily like the entire like horror scene, but like, I mean, without Blair Witch, you don't have Paranormal Activity. So like, Paranormal Activity kind of couldn't do what Blair Witch did, because like, we're in the internet era, and it can easily be debunked as fake, but also just it's not done as well.
The atmosphere in Blair Witch is awesome,
and the kids are like good actors.
Yeah,
so
they sell it for sure.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm a big believer. Paranormal Activity is very overrated, and my vitriol comes because it spawned so many shitty sequels.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say Halloween, because I think Michael Myers is stupid. And okay, call my opinion uneducated, but I haven't seen all the Halloween sequels because I don't fucking want to, or I feel like I need to. And if you're a fan of these films and you've watched all of them and say like, no, there's like an underlying plot and there's a point to why like Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back to do it at fucking like 70 or whatever she is.
Well, this is what happened.
Fine.
This is what
like,
happened.
I think him walking slow in his blue jumpsuit, like I just think that's all dumb.
This is what happened.
The theme song's lit, but I think the movie's dumb.
This is what happened. Is they did the sequel, they did the first one, and I'm pretty sure they did the one that just came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
As they scratched all the other movies and were like, this is the sequel. And I will say this. I'm a big fan of John Carpenter's first one, and I think the newest one is actually the second best one in the franchise. It's actually a pretty decent horror movie. The rest of them though are booty. I'm with you there.
Well, it's like, how am I, and I'm not a horror fan, so like I probably won't ever sit down and watch these movies. But it's like, why, why did it take to like the fourth or fifth one to come out like a couple years ago, to go back and like retcon the others and like be like the real sequel? And that's why, it's like there's so many sequels in the horror genre. And I feel like Halloween is like, and if there is a good sequel out there, like I'm glad that it does have that, but like the two or three that like bridge those, I feel like are part of the reason why every horror has to have a sequel now. And you get to the oversaturation of the genre, and you get to like if you go to like the worst movies of all time lists, I know IMDb's in particular, all of like the bottom ones are all horror movies, and and I feel like that's why.
The Halloween franchise I would defend before Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay. That's just me, but I with Nightmare on Elm Street,
and Friday
it has cool like groundbreaking imagery kind of, and for special effects it did.
Nightmare on Elm Street is
Freddy, and it has some pretty gross imagery in it. But outside of that, I think like it's fucking stupid. Like this guy like comes to you in your dreams and kills you, and he wears a glove and he's all burnt. I don't know. I think those are a little corny, but it's the horror genre. You're gonna have ones you like and dislike. So we'll move to underrated.
Okay.
This one's hard.
I know.
There's a few I thought of. I thought of Prisoners,
Mm-hmm.
which again, it's one that teeters on. It's more of a suspenseful thriller, not necessarily a actually no. I'm sorry. That was my next. I'm getting my topics mixed up here. Underrated. Have you ever heard of a movie called Bone Tomahawk?
I've definitely heard of it, but I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, so this proves my point a little bit. It is a Western horror, and I believe the director's name is S. Craig Zahler, but he's become kind of like this grindhouse maestro, and his movies are always really gory. But this movie it stars Kurt Russell, Richard Jenkins, Patrick Wilson, and Matthew Fox. And there's like
Patrick Wilson is in every movie. I think at least in this genre.
Yeah.
Like Patrick Wilson.
Oh, especially in horror.
You
with
might
Conjuring and Insidious.
you might not know Patrick Wilson, but you know Patrick Wilson's face because he's in all of these movies. I swear to God, look him up.
He's the man.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love like somebody on Twitter like a month ago was just like, I don't know who this MF is, but he's famous. And then like Patrick Wilson quoted it and he's like, shit, they're on to me.
That's funny. So the movie is about this cannibalistic cannibalistic like tribe that starts preying on these simple townsfolk, and a couple of the people get together to go rescue Patrick Wilson's wife while also maybe taking out the tribe. And it is really slow burning. The acting is really good, and the kills in it are fucking nasty. Like so gross. It is really embodies the Wild West, and it does not try to just be like, boom, you're dead. It's like with like whether it's scalping or like disemboweling people. It is so violent.
That's my kind of violence.
And this is what I'm saying is there's a couple of scenes in that movie that I can point to, and I was like, that freaked the fucking shit out of me.
Yeah.
So very effective movie, and if you haven't seen Bone Tomahawk, I definitely recommend it because it's a different type of horror, but it's very effective in what it does. And I love that it's a Western because I feel like that's a genre that could use a little more horror.
Okay. Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula came out in 92. It's not necessarily like a horror film, but it kind of has like old school like horror elements to it. To Gary,
like the Nosferatu.
Gary Oldman plays Dracula. Keanu Reeves is in it. It's good. Like it's a good movie. I think it's pretty underrated. But like it fits in with like the time, unless you're reading like the Dracula novel or you're, in a Halloweeny mood this week, which you should be. Then like it's a decent watch.
What about it's scary? Or like maybe makes it a little underrated?
I think like the to have like Dracula be in like a modern film without it being like stupid is really well done.
I see what you like Van Helsing or something like
right
that.
and like I feel like a lot of like the vampire movies as of late have kind of been dumb and either really Hollywood or really just overzealous with special effects, and I think Dracula is not only really well done as an adaptation of the book. I think like the versions of the characters are really well done, and like there are some scenes where like Gary Oldman's like Dracula is like really fucking fast because like that's one of Dracula's powers. Like it's kind of creepy.
Gets you a little.
Yeah, it's just
jittery.
like whoa shit. Yeah, yeah, and then there's like scenes in the dark, scenes with blood, all that kind of stuff. But it's good. But I'm not gonna
good Halloween watch.
Yes. But I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with
180.
Yeah, I'm going to go with The Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's because
It's a good movie.
I feel like it still gets like that cult follower kind of vibe to it, and it's like I feel like people don't sit down and watch it because it is freaky looking and there are like creepy, stop motion animation about it. But like, it's a really well done film with a lot of heart to it, and I really enjoy it. Like, and it's taken me to become like an adult tech, because when I was a kid, I was like, this is kind of freaky. Why is it on in October?
It's scarier than E.T.
October and December. And Tim Burton, I mean, everybody knows Tim Burton. He's a weird fucking guy. He makes weird movies. So The Nightmare Before Christmas, I think at surface level, like, yes, it is very creepy looking. The songs are creepy. The characters in it are creepy looking.
Oogie Boogie?
Yeah, Oogie Boogie's the villain. I would say he's probably the least creepy part of the movie. I think it's just like the Halloween Town like folks, like the fucking like snake people and all of these things like that are just kind of like background characters. Like, they're creepy. But I think it's more of a Halloween movie than a Christmas movie for sure, and I think it is underrated because I feel like people like know it, but they haven't seen it, and it's definitely worth the watch, and it's a really well done movie, and I think it's definitely underrated, and it should be recognized more for just its characters. It should be recognized as like a really well done movie.
It is the perfect movie for parents to introduce their kids to horror movies.
I would say so. Yeah, that's pretty good. Or E.T.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Our next topic is surprisingly scary, which is basically a movie that's not meant to be a horror necessarily, but
E.T.
yeah, I assume that yours wasn't going to change.
Yeah. Well, let me think, because I don't want to just have this be the E.T. episode. Titanic. Titanic is not a romance story. It's a fucking horror film, okay? Like, there's nothing romantic about that movie to me. Everybody dies, except for Kate Winslet and Billy Zane. But holy shit, that movie's terrifying. Like, I legitimately have a fear of open water and boats because of this movie.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, actually to any rational person, like, if you watch that, your first activity shouldn't be let's go on a fucking boat. It's terrifying.
My parents are going on a cruise, I think next year or something, and I'm like, I still think of Titanic.
Yeah. Boats sink, man.
Kind of ruined it. Yeah.
It's like I'm actually scared of boats and water because of that movie. So like, yeah, like I think unintentionally scary. Because like I feel like, like people like, oh, it's such a sweet story and the song and like the and the Leo dies, everybody drowns, there's bodies floating in the water, there's water fucking bursting through windows and shit. The dumb captain goes down with the ship like an asshole. Like it's terrifying. Like the band chooses to play. Yeah, fuck that movie. I that movie's. That movie freaks me out, man.
I thought of Gyllenhaal's Nightcrawler. It's actually pretty creepy.
Yeah, it is.
The sound, what the story sounds like, doesn't present it as creepy, but it actually is when you're watching it. Mainly because his character is just a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
But I'm not going with that. The first time I saw The Hateful Eight, I was sweating.
Really?
Yes, I was so captivated by that movie because it becomes very bloody and glorious Tarantino.
But the suspense in it is
but
really.
But the first half of that movie, I remember being like,
"Oh yeah,
whoa!" And this kind of furthers that a little bit. Is some of the songs that are used by Ennio Morricone were original for The Hateful Eight, but he also used some of his old songs from The Thing, which is one of the great sci-fi horrors of all time.
Yeah.
So he intentionally made it a little scary. He also himself, Tarantino, said he doesn't know if he'll ever do a horror movie, but the closest he's come is the Manson segment on the ranch in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That was creepy too.
And The Hateful Eight. And I thought first half of The Hateful Eight, I was legitimately like really on edge. And I rewatch, you obviously know what happens, so that lessens a bit. But that initial viewing, I was definitely sweating bullets more than I do in
the
some
music
horror
is definitely one of the bigger aspects as to why. Because like you know, like it's been a decent amount of time since I've rewatched that, but the music still like you know shivers.
Yeah,
Like
it's cold.
yeah, it's very cold. It's dark. It's unknowing. And that yeah that definitely boosts that film. I feel like one of the better aspects of the Hateful Eight. Like one of the positives to me, if I was like reviewing that film, I'd be like the music is fucking horrifying.
Won an Oscar. R.I.P. Morricone.
Yeah,
He just passed this year, I think.
yeah. What was he like 90 something when he won that Oscar? And
I think he was 88 or something. He was fucking old.
old.
What a badass.
Yeah.
He's also done, you know, if you guys don't know, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
A lot.
All the Leon movies. Yeah, just fucking everything. All right, that'll bring us to our final topic, which is untapped potential. And what this means is basically for the horror genre to survive. The horror genre is not going away. We both know that. But what are some areas going forward that it could maybe tap into to pour some juice into the franchise that isn't just the horror movie or Jordan Peele and Mike Flanagan carrying it on
Yeah.
their back? What would you say?
Well, I think I've already mentioned like a longing for like noir films. And I know that the genre still exists. I know that like thriller noirs like still exist in the modern world, but like you know, I mean, this is pretty niche, but like you and I took a noir film class in college, and then like one of our projects in that class was to like go and watch like an unknown like noir film, and there's this movie I watched like called 99 River Street, and like you know, I mean, unless you were born in like the 40s or 50s and like pay attention to kind of old school actors, like relatively unknown people. But like I really enjoyed that movie, and like I feel like those noir films were being like pumped out at like a crazy rate back then, and I feel like you know the general quality even of this unknown noir film that I watched, like the quality of like like the horror version in the modern era of like 99 River Street is I don't know, Paranormal Activity 3 or whatever, you know. I just feel like you know, I mean, we do live in the time of sequels and adaptations, and there's nothing that you know, there's nothing that can really change that because those are what are making money, and those
Yeah.
are what is coming out. But like I guess I long for like, you know, you can make a story about a murder still, or a femme fatale, or you know, a mystery, and still have it hit, you know, and still have it be successful in the modern era. And you know, I think Drive, starring Ryan Gosling, I think it's the most underrated movie of the 21st century. But like that movie, yeah, it's not like a horror. Definitely
It has elements though with the kills.
a neo noir thriller that has like horror elements. I think that's how the horror genre survives is films like that. And you know, I think like the jump scare movies are kind of, I mean, they're always going to sell. People are always going to go see them. It's like, go take a girl to go see a movie, and she's going to be all over you the whole movie because it's scary. That's going to sell all the time. So, you know, there's no getting rid of it. But, like, I wish to see more, like, psychologically thrilling mystery, like, noir films that have horror elements in them, because I think for someone like me who kind of refuses to go pay and see the horror sequels and doesn't really like to go see the horror movies in general, that's how you scare me. That's how you get me to think about your movie and have it sit with me. It is like the psychological thrillers.
Yeah, and there's plenty like you who just people out there who are just horror movies don't scare me. They're stupid.
Yeah.
But you need to find a different way, and that's kind of what we're talking about right now. I mentioned the Western earlier. I think that there's plenty of potential there. Outside of Guillermo del Toro, not a lot of people have tapped into the dark fantasy aspect. Like, I would love a really invested feature that's focused on like these small townsfolk that a like dragon fucking wreaks havoc on them, and it's not just a VFX movie. Like it's more focused on
Right.
the terror that it causes, like Jaws, and the monster really scares you. But I'm gonna go with war movies. 1917 had small elements of horror. Apocalypse Now does as well, but I can't think of Hacksaw Ridge. They have these elements of shock and awe that horror provides, but I would love to see one that's just like full on like a war horror movie. Maybe someone who gets separated from their unit, and you know, I'm not the I'm
I mean,
not a
World War
filmmaker, but I think
One
that
and Two is, I mean, Vietnam,
just someone
just
by
something in the
themselves
jungle.
in the jungle, and it's really focused on their psychology and things they're maybe imagining due to food deprivation or even the enemy being scary. I just think that the war genre has a ton of potential because it is already pretty tough to watch at times, and I feel like if someone really tackled it head on.
I like that a lot. I mean,
like the beginning of 1917 when they go into no man's land is like really fucking, like when he puts his hand in the guy's guts or whatever, like that was very horror-esque, but it kind of does away with that as the movie.
Them and like the collapsing like tunnels and stuff, like that's scary, and that's like a real life horror. Just like that sense of claustrophobia, and even someone who doesn't like horror films really like. I'm a video gamer. The horror genre in video gaming is huge. People love them. Like Resident Evils, like they've kind of gone away from being like a more like story game, and they've like the most recent Resident Evil was like a VR game, and there's a lot of like VR horrors. And
I hate to cut you off, but we are literally ticking to the end.
Well, we are out of time, but horror, if you like, if you're not a fan of horror films, horror video games are an awesome future for the genre as well.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Hit that like and subscribe. We are actually out of time. We'll see you next week.
Peace. Happy Halloween.